I'm Dawn Campbell, your host as usual for our 30-minute session, Ask Me Anything About Accreditation. And for those of you who enjoy a cup of coffee or tea listening to these conversations, you'll know they often go off-piste and get really, really deep and interesting. And today is not going to be any different. I'm joined by Executive Coach Anish. Welcome, Anish.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Aurora, for having me here on this podcast.
You're very welcome indeed. Now, Anish and I had a conversation, must be about 4 months ago now, about accreditation. And we got into such a deep spiritual conversation about what does it mean to embody the practice of being a coach. So I said, I must have you back as one of my live stream guests. So finally, we made it. So thank you very much. Anish, what fills your heart with joy? What makes your heart sing outside of work, I wonder?
Aurora, you know me, it's the depth of spirituality, the impact that spirituality has on each and every aspect of our life. And as a coach, especially as a coach, because I don't see coaching as a work. So for me, it's not that there's an hours which I'm coaching, which is work, and there is something else which fills my heart, which is outside the realm of coaching. So coaching is not work or a part-time thing for me. So it's what my life is. And spirituality into coaching, that's fills me up whenever I think about it. And the more that I get into not only the introspections, but into the practice of it, work through my coaches, work onto myself, forget about filling it overflows. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I remember that came across very powerful, that energy, walking the walk and talking the talk. And that's what we mean by an embodied experience, that it's not a hat that you put on. I've got a coaching session at 2 o'clock. And in fact, there are lots of little subtle differences between a coach who calls them sessions or meetings or versus those who have conversations. So talk me through some of that, because I know you look for that specifically, don't you, Anish?
Yes, I do. And, the first time that I heard this word session, so I had one of the client approaching me and says, I want to have coaching sessions with you. And the first thing I came to my mind that, hey, is there a problem for which you're coming to me? Is there a problem? Because when you have a problem, let's say you have a legal problem, you go to a legal counselor for legal sessions. Okay, you go to let's say a marriage counselor when there's a problem, and there's certain sessions that you have. Coaching is not about sessions. Coaching is not about, so you have an expert sitting on one side and you have the other person sitting on the other person on the other side, and this expert is giving information or something like that. That's not coaching. Coaching is a conversation. It's an exchange of energy. What happens in a conversation? It's an exchange of energy. It's much deeper than a contact or communication. It's conversation. And the deeper the energy exchange that happens, the deeper the conversation goes. So whenever we are into a coaching conversation, it's the energy exchange that what the coach should be able to sense and how that exchange is happening. So it's not what the person in the front is saying, it's what's behind it. What's the energy behind it? What's the color to that energy? What's the blockage to the energy that the person is sensing, feeling, for him, and that manifests into the words that comes out. So instead of focusing on the words, going back into the deeper into the energy and have those deep conversations. And the best conversation that you have is a conversation through silence. That's the deepest conversation you can have. So just maintain that silence conversation. Keep on sensing the energy. and say only the words when you sense that, okay, there is something to be said. It's not like a bullet, you ask questions and you, oh, I'm wondering, I'm curious. That doesn't work. That's so artificial. It's the silence that you maintain. You connect deeper with your coachee, the person in front of you, and feel him. Sense him in that perspective. See what the flow of the energy is. That can only happen when you are silent. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Hmm. And of course, it's an equal relationship. And there'll be a lot of coaches out there who do think of themselves as the guru, the expert, the coach with the title. And I'm sure I was one of those 20 years ago when I started, you know, with my props, the top 50 coaching questions, waiting for the client to pause so I could ask my next brilliant question and show how good I was. But increasingly, when I'm talking to students and graduates, I'm saying less is more. Listen. Your next question comes from listening to the answer of the client. But most people are quite frightened of silence, Anish. And there's lots of different types of silence, but they don't like it.
Yeah, and most of the coaches don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of work first coach has to do on himself or herself.
Mm-hmm.
See, it's a very noble area, coaching. Like we say, medical is a noble profession.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, medical, it's even more deeper than that, because let's say the medical profession may work on the physical aspect, may work on the mental impact, the mental aspect, or maybe a social aspect or an intellectual aspect, but deepest is the spiritual aspect and what brings all this together. So that means the noblest, I can't even call it a profession, I would say it's a service. So the noblest service that one can provide is that of coaching, which means the coach has to continue work on himself or herself and be comfortable with silence. If the silence is not there, it's not just the physical silence, it's also the mental and the intellectual silence. When you are silent, it is what everything sinks up. Every coach, that's the first practice the coach has to do on himself. Before he can even think of speaking to others or try to be a coach to the others, he's not qualified. Mm-hmm. He's just not qualified. If I'm not comfortable with my own self or maintaining silence, what right do I have to even try to be a mirror to the person in front of me? We all say that coach is like a speaking mirror. But the mirror is all, I would say, a lot of aberrations in the mirror if the silence is not there, if that alignment, comfort in the coach is not there. And if the mirror is full of those aberrations, then the reflection is not going to be good. Mm. That correction has to happen first in the self as a coach, understanding the dignity, the noblest part of, I would say it's one of the noblest services, I keep on saying. That gravity, that what it means to write, I am a coach, to even have the courage to write that I am a coach. Beyond these accreditations, I know you're into accreditations, but then beyond these accreditations, beyond everything, writing coach, your hands should absolutely be ready. Your head, heart, and hand, the 3H, the alignment of these three should be totally in before you can even afford to say, okay, I am a coach. Aurora, it took me years to prefix my name with a coach.
Mhm.
I would never call myself a coach. I could not even dare to call myself a coach. When I felt that, okay, now I am ready, now I can say I am a coach, then I put in the prefix as a coach. Otherwise, no. Then I'm not authentic. And if there's no authenticity, it doesn't work.
And what you've just described flies in the face of the reality of the situation, particularly post-COVID, when we see increasing numbers of people add the word coach to their title. And we have a situation where in the UK, and I'm sure it's the same the world over, where hundreds of thousands of people are calling themselves a coach without being trained, insured if their country offers insurance, accredited. It's seen as another income stream as opposed to something that's vocational, that they embody and they understand what it actually means to hold that privilege, to sit with somebody and facilitate a coaching conversation.
Yeah. And it was so I was filled with compassion when I look at these guys who are sitting at home. Free time, what do? Let me become a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And let me start some second line of income for myself. And maybe once I'm done with my job or anything, then I can come into it full time. Okay. Or let me just do a small certification online. I really, my heart goes out to these people. Is the other way. I don't blame them. I don't say that. It's just when you put yours, and most of these people today, I get to know, are struggling in the market to even find someone to speak to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the only way for them to is, okay, no, you know what? This is what we used to charge. I'll cut my money. This is what I'll charge today. Because the whole concept of coaching, they don't get it. And they've not been exposed to. That's why I'm so compassionate towards these people. They have spent their time, energy, and effort, which is limited for us. We have limited time, we have limited energy, we have limited effort with us. They have spent that into something which they don't understand, and they have not been guided properly.
Mm-hmm.
I feel so compassionate towards these people. I call them Corona coaches, but I feel really compassionate towards them. Despite of their investment of their money is one aspect in whatever certification that they've spent the money, is the time, energy, effort.
Mm-hmm.
Their ROI is negative on their time, energy, and effort because they've not been guided properly. They've not been shared the whole, what is coaching all about?
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to look at it, the coaching institutes, whatnots that they've been getting them is like a coach factory. Come to us and we'll get you this certificate. We'll give you this certificate so that you can write coach. Really, I mean, so much of compassion comes to me for these poor people who've been misled into something. No fault of theirs. It's like going to a doctor and saying, I have a headache. And the doctor says, yeah, come. I'll take care of your headache, and then charge money for that and say, okay, now you're done. That's what the coaching institutes have done. The patient is not to be blamed. These people who have writing coach today, they are not to be blamed because they have not been guided properly. What's their fault? And I've come across, yesterday only I was speaking to one of my colleagues who had, his friend had become a coach during the Corona period, thinking that, you know what, there are people waiting outside that I can coach. I'll get a lot of people to coach, and you know what, I'll start earning money, because this is what they've been told from wherever he got his training done.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they told them. Oh, you know what, just get this thing titled coach there, and people will be there outside waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
2 years he struggled. The amount of time, energy, effort that he invested without being aware of what the reality is, what coaching is all about. I really, really felt, what can I do for this gent? It's like my heart went out to this guy, and he's not alone. There's so many, as you rightly said, especially during the Corona period, they've come up. So let's be compassionate towards these people. Let's see how we can do something to make them aware of what coaching is all about. And if it still connects with them, maybe handhold them so that at least there is some returns on the time, energy, effort that they can see. If not financially, at least there is some peace, satisfaction, contentment, or being service to the other. Maybe that way it can be felt.
I hadn't thought about our portfolio route as compassionate, but I think it fulfills that requirement, in that there are great coaches out there who have been well trained, or it's vocational and it's very natural, it's in them. And I think the portfolio route to accreditation is a sort of almost a catch-all. So we've had people who have been coaching in the forces, for instance, for years. They've never been on a formal coaching course. So we didn't want to exclude potentially great coaches, and that's why we created the portfolio route. And I think that has that compassionate element to them in terms of how they got there, why they got there, and what support we can give them. But I think it's also worth noting, and it struck me more this year, at how this industry has evolved since I trained as what I would almost call a cookie cutter coach 20 years ago, to the coach training institutes that we're accrediting now. I would say 90% of them are very focused on mind and body and spirit, as opposed to pure coaching that we used to train in years and years ago. It's really maturing as an industry, Anish. And I hope you will come across those sorts of coaches who they're learning all sorts of different modalities around the mind, the body, and the spirit, as opposed to just asking coaching questions. So I'm very heartened, even though, as I say, there's lots of people adding coaching to their skill set because they see it as an income opportunity. But the coaches who are really working hard at their apprenticeship and learning the art of a conversation, and that the mind body are very much connected, I'm very encouraged by the coaches, the next generation of coaches, and the training providers that I'm seeing. And of course, you're a training provider as well. So you're training coaches. What are you seeing? Can you concur with what I'm saying?
Absolutely, 100% here, Aurora. You're spot on. You know, that trend of during the Corona period, or let's say during the period that you just become a coach as a second source of income. Okay, that was the driving force. Today, the people that I'm training or working with, they are coming with a reason. There is a purpose behind for them becoming a coach.
Yeah.
They are consciously choosing it. And many of them are not even calling it, we don't call it a profession. Even though we say it's a professional coaching, but we don't say it's a profession. We always maintain that coaching is a service.
Okay.
Service, the other person is primary, you are secondary. So the accountability factor, which was missing in coaching, where the coach would not hold himself accountable for the person who's coming to him. So he would do all sorts of things so that the accountability goes on to the coachee, and coach is not accountable. So if whatever the coachee is coming for is not feeling the change, so it's all that maybe the coachee has not worked enough. Okay, maybe he's not practiced enough. The coach would not hold himself accountable. So I see that changing. Like for us at Crestcon, we hold ourselves accountable. For us, the money comes later. We say we don't even charge by per hour or per conversation. We only charge by outcome. And then only when the outcome has happened, where the coachee has a choice to gauge that whether he has got what he was looking for, was there a value, was there a return on his time, energy, and investment, he decides, because it's a service. So if there is a change, there is a value that he sees, then he pays for that. If not, fine. What right do we have to charge for that? The accountability part. So in the new generation, the people that we are working with training, we are training it as a service. We are training them, and they are absolutely open to it. And they're also living up to this challenge of being accountable and not looking at it as a way of earning money. Rather, money would come in as a way of a service to the society. And in return, society would always pay back. There is never, ever happens when you do something good for the society, society does not pay you back. It always does. Have faith. Have confidence in what you are doing, the service that you're providing. Have confidence in that. Have faith in the society. You would never be disappointed.
The first time I experienced that was when I went on the Vipassana retreat. And they said they had the Dana principle. At the end of the 10 days, you just paid what you felt you got out of the retreat. And that payment was a donation for the next person, and so on. So you were never really paying for yourself. You were there at the generosity of the person before you. And there's a lovely energy to all of that.
I don't know to make this as an advertisement for Vipassana, but these Vipassana meditations, they are booked so much in advance. Why? The energy is positive. It's not about money. It's about a service, and let the society then pay you back for the service that you provided. That's the principle. The retreat that I hold is the same thing, is exactly the same thing. That, okay, money, let's leave it out. You first come and experience the retreat. See what changes that you sense in yourself, what you feel in yourself, what you put into practice, how you feel, and then you contribute. It's a contribution based on the value that you see for the time, energy, and effort that you put in. Have faith. And that is what the new generation coaches, that what we are working with, that's the way of looking at things, the way, the whole approach to the coaching. That's what we are trying to work towards. It works.
Yeah, I'm sure. How did you get into coaching, Anish?
It's been a natural transition that happened. So my journey, Aurora, has been into the research of Indian knowledge system, into the different traditions, especially onto the Vedanta, Advaitic Vedanta, moved on to the Nalanda traditions, which is the Madhyamika Buddhism, spent many years into that, understanding that. So I used to read a lot. And one of the major scripture in Indian knowledge system is a text called Bhagavad Gita. Okay, it's a very popular text, and it's one of the main texts in the Indian system, where you have the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. It's a conversation. And if you read that, it's a typical, beautiful coaching conversation.
Oh, okay.
Krishna is considered the first ever coach in the world. And he has a coachee in form of Arjun. And there's a conversation, a coaching conversation happened. That I got hooked on to that conversation. And that's where I entered into the realm of coaching. Even the name you see, Crestcon. Many times I'm asked what this Crestcon means. Some people call it Krishna consciousness. That's from where the Crestcon is coming. But Crestcon means movement with consciousness. And Krishna is speaking all about consciousness in that. Yeah. The way the question answers goes, the way Krishna allows Arjun to express himself, the safe ground that the safe space that he creates for Arjun to ask, Arjun to introspect, Arjun to, it's it's a manual. It's like the most beautiful manual you can get on coaching.
Wow.
That's how I entered into coaching.
Okay. Well, you've just fired me up because I'm looking at the book, the series of 3. I got them for my birthday. I haven't read them yet. I can just almost feel the energy of them falling off the shelf for me to start my bedtime reading tonight. So thank you. Well, you know, I don't want to keep you any longer than necessary because I know you're a busy man, but I really appreciate you coming back and trying to condense our beautiful hour-long conversation into half an hour. And perhaps I could just leave you with a question, or is it a question? Yeah. If you had to sum up in just a few words for particularly for the younger generation of coaches who are starting out, what does it mean to be a coach? What piece of advice or tips would you give them to set them on the right path?
The first and the foremost order is to understand the gravity of being a coach. That's the first and the foremost one. Rest all is secondary. How you train, what you train, why are you becoming a coach? What does it mean to write coach with your name? It's like when you write doctor, it has a gravity.
Mm-hmm.
It has a responsibility. It has an accountability. It has a trustworthiness. Same way when you're writing coach, understand the gravity of this word coach. And especially for us Indians, when we consider Krishna as the coach, you are actually trying to put yourself in his place when you say you are a coach. It's that noble. It's that divine. That seriousness, that responsibility of looking yourself in the footsteps of Krishna. You really, really, really need to be sure about it, ready about it. And once you're into it, it's not something you can do a part-time job or it is about, okay, a side money. No, it's very noble. It's divine. And that purity of that divinity, that has to be absolutely held on. Once you do that, rest all, your every action, whether it's a physical action, whether it's a speech or a mental action. These are 3 ways the action happens. Whether it's a physical action, speech action, or a mental action, they would automatically come in that way because these actions are driven by what's the ground on which you're operating. If it's the ground of divinity you're operating, your every action would reflect that. So please be aware of this.
Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. I look forward to our paths crossing again. Bye-bye now.